What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Saludo Carson Plays. It is Sunday night. We've got a lot to talk about. A lot happened this week. In particular, the main event of UFC Fight Night last night, which has created quite a bit of controversy. And we're going to talk about it. And then, not to be outdone, hold my beer situation, the wrestling world, which there's tons of stories that are a bit controversial. Particularly tonight, we're going to talk about Stephanie McMahon stepping away from WWE for a little bit, what that might mean, why that should concern you. And then also Naomi and Sasha Banks walking out on Monday Night Raw, and the amount of fervor that's created in the wrestling world. You've got people on both sides. I'm gonna share my opinion on the matter tonight, and it's probably going to be a bit controversial and a bit spicy, which is something that I'm known for. So if you're here for that take. But on top of that, I'd love to hear your take on all of these stories. So please feel free to comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Obviously, I'm interested because there's a lot going on lately in the worlds of MMA and professional wrestling. So just plenty for us to get into and talk about tonight. And we've got a bit of a limited time to do so. So I think we're going to get right into it. If you are watching live, welcome. If you're watching the replay, welcome. We appreciate you being here with us. Like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. Maybe some channel news coming up. I'm like batting ideas around in my head on how I want to handle the channel, because right now we just have a lot of different content we're posting on this main channel, and I don't know if this is the right place for it or if we should be creating separate channels for each of these entities. You know what? Let me know in the comments section if you happen to catch this video on what you think. Should we post all of our content here, right here on one spot? Or should we post our wrestling content here and maybe some of our other content on a different channel? We do some movie stuff. We do some, we do the Misremembering podcast. Maybe that should have its own channel. I don't know. I'm batting around ideas in my head because obviously I want to provide the people who are here at this channel with the content that they want. A lot of the wrestling people are here because they like the wrestling stuff. A lot of the MMA people are here because they like the MMA stuff. And they don't really care about the Misremembering podcast or the movie stuff. And the movie people don't care about the wrestling stuff. So I'm just trying to balance that out and figure out how I want to do that. So anyways, more to come on that in the future, I am certain. But I don't, let's get right into story number one. Let's get right into what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Let's just do window. I don't think I'm playing any audio. Let's pull this up here. So this is really where I want to kick it off tonight. So last night, the main event, Holly Holm, Ketlin Vieira, they go all 5 rounds. It goes to the judge's decision, and the judges gave the fight to Ketlin Vieira. Now, that might seem fine unless you watched the fight, because this decision is getting quite the bit of pushback, and I think it deserves it. So watching this fight last night, and in my opinion, it was a no-brainer that Holly Holm was going to win this fight. Literally in my notes, under the 5th round, I wrote something like, Holly Holm is going to win, but I don't know how she would do in a title fight. I don't know how she would do. That's what I wrote, something like that. And then the judges came to their decision, and it was a split decision, but it turned out that Ketlin Vieira got the nod. And I'm like, what in the hell is what is this decision? So I'll run down the fight a little bit and just kind of give you the background, and then we can do some of these stories and talk about it. Watching the fight, the story of this fight was essentially Holly Holm would lock Vieira up in a clinch and then dominate in the clinch. There really wasn't much Vieira could do once Holly got her locked up in the clinch. Now, Vieira caught Holly with a couple of good strikes throughout the fight, but they didn't really do any damage. I don't think at any point Holly was in trouble. So in my opinion, because, Holm just kind of dominated the fight by locking up the clinch, I thought for sure Holm was going to win. I think maybe Ketlin, she might have won like one round. I think she got a takedown. I can't remember exactly when. But this was really Holly Holm's fight. And, I'll talk a little more about my thoughts on the fight and going forward. But here you go. DAZN. This is from DAZN News. Ketlin Vieira wins shocking decision over Holly Holm. And here you go. Even DAZN right here. Ketlin Vieira looks to have gotten a gift from the judges. They agree Holly Holm looked to continue her path to getting a shot at becoming a 2-time women's bantamweight champion on Saturday. She'd won back-to-back fights coming in, and a win would have put her in a position to challenge the winner of the bantamweight title rematch between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes at UFC 277. Actually excited for that fight. When the fight ended, Holm had done more than enough to win. So even they agree. Even DAZN here in this article agrees with me that Holm had done more than enough to win. She controlled the action. And this is a key note that they point out. And I'm going to show you this. I got this on a separate screen. But Holm landed more significant strikes and total strikes. And it wasn't even close. Holm was more active in the fight. Holly Holm was more active in the fight than Ketlin Vieira. But when the judges rendered their decision, here DAZN theorizes they felt that Vieira's harder shots were enough to give her the win. Now you see this here. DAZN scored the fight 49-46 for Holm, which is, I think, how I scored the fight. But here you go. According to stats provided by the UFC, Holm connected on 183 out of 295 total strikes compared to 104 with 178 attempted for Vieira. So that is a huge marginal difference. That's not even like, well, the judges might have missed a few or yada, yada, yada. And that's total strikes. And then when you look at significant strikes, Holm was 112 for 219 thrown, while Vieira was 63 for 136 thrown. So Holm was definitely the more active fighter, and she was landing more often. Look, for Vieira, this is a big win. I mean, let's just take a step back. Now, again, I think Holly Holm should have won this fight. But for Ketlin Vieira, this is a pretty big win. She's got back-to-back wins against Holly Holm and Miesha Tate. So obviously, she wants the winner of Pena Nunes, and she might get her. She might get the winner because I don't know who else is in contention here. Holm was visibly upset when the scorecards were read. She had every right to be. And in all honesty, again, I think this fight was stolen. So here you go. Here it is. 188 over 263. Well, I love how they like color them in. Like, oh, her ribs were red. How do you know that? So 188 for 263. Vieira was 122 for 190. 85. So I think these are different than what DAZN just said, but still. Yeah, so they have it different. They have some different statistics here. But interesting. So what does this mean? Well, this means, like I said before, I think Vieira is going to probably be the next contender for the title. I don't think she has enough to beat Juliana Pena or Amanda Nunes. I don't think to be fair, I don't think Holly Holm does either. And I kind of honestly think that had Holm won this fight, I think it was pretty obvious if you watch the fight that Holly Holm was visibly slower. They even called this out on commentary last night. She's 40 years old, and she was visibly slower than she has been in the past. Even her last fight, she was she was a step back from what she used to be. I thought she looked stiff. Like, I didn't think her head movement was very good. And it looked like she would come in for these combos, but it was like boom, 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 and then just back out. But you knew she was coming. It was slow enough that I think if you were on the other side of the octagon, you could see her coming in. She was just a step slower than she usually is. She used to be. And, unfortunately, at 40 years old, I mean, at some point, you got to realize that if you're fighting in your 40s, you're going to be slower than when you were in your 30s. And Holly Holm's been at this for a long time, man. So this is a pretty disappointing loss. I don't know what this means for her career. I don't think she's going to get another title shot. I mean, unless she could string like 2 or 3 wins together, but I honestly think that's going to be pretty tough for Holly Holm. I think she's going to have a hard time doing that because we saw Holly Holm last night and it was a slower version of Holly Holm. And you got to think, right? 6 months later, she's got, let's say her next fight is 6 months to a year down the line. Well, that's going to be an even slower Holly Holm, right? So what are we going to get when we see Holm back in the octagon in 6 months to a year, right? An even slower version of Holly Holm, right? And at some point, you got to hang him up. And honestly, if I'm Holly Holm, I've accomplished a lot in this sport. I was the first person to beat Ronda Rousey. I'll go down, no matter what happens in my career, I will always go down in history as being the first person to defeat Ronda Rousey. And, I mean, what else is there? Now, going into the fight at the weigh-ins, I actually thought Holly Holm looked like she was wearing the weigh-in a bit too. Like she just didn't look, I don't know. She looked off at the weigh-ins to me too. So it'll be interesting to see going forward what happens. Again, Ketlen Vieira has a lot of work to do if she wants to be at that level of Juliana Pena or Amanda Nunes. So I really think she's just got a lot to work on there if she wants to be in contention for the championship. I think she'll get the fight because who else is there? But I really think she's got a lot of work to do if she wants to be at that level. So I'm very curious. And I would be interested to know your thoughts in the comments section below. What did you think about this fight? Did you think, and let's just take a look. That's the zone. Let's take a look at the scorecards real quick. Here, I don't know if you can read this, but here you go. Derek Cleary and Mike Bell scored the contest the exact same. They gave Holm the first and they gave Holm the last round. But they gave Vieira the 3 rounds in between. And I just, again, how? Were they watching a different fight? Sal D'Amato gave Holm the third, gave Vieira the second and the fourth. I contend that Vieira may have won the second. But again, I don't know how they saw the fight that way. But anyways, let me know in the comment section what you thought of this fight. Did you think that do you think that the right decision was rendered? Did Ketlen Vieira do enough to win this fight? And what do you think is next for Holly Holm? Go ahead and comment in the comments section about that because I'm very curious of your take on that. All right. Pivoting into the world of professional wrestling, and there's so much going on these days. So much drama behind the scenes. The behind the scenes is usually more exciting in wrestling than the on-screen content that we're getting. So it shouldn't be a surprise. But right now, there is just so much going on behind the scenes of WWE and AEW that it's really overshadowing the in-ring product. I think quite a bit. And that's sad. That's a bit sad, especially for the performers. But it sort of is what it is, right? So this news dropped earlier this week. It looks like May 19th. Stephanie McMahon announced that she is stepping away from WWE for the time being. And according to her, it's to prioritize her family. So it was reported originally that this was a bit of a shock to a lot of people backstage. They didn't see this coming. They weren't privy to this information. So they found out at the same time as everybody else when McMahon tweeted this. But then it was also reported that actually quite a few people already knew. So a little bit of conflicting reports there. But what I think is more important is, what does this mean? And if we want to have a little fun with it, we want to read into this a little deeper. What does it mean for WWE that the McMahons are sort of stepping away or losing a little bit of power? I think the more important note out of this isn't that Stephanie is stepping away. I mean, that happens, right? Let's say, people step away from their jobs for brief periods of times for a myriad of number of reasons. But what's more important, I think, is that Nick Khan is actually going to be taking over many of Stephanie's responsibilities while she's gone. That to me is the more important nugget of information here, because if you've been following WWE backstage news and politics and all of that stuff, you would know that Nick Khan has kind of been consolidating power within the company. And it's just sort of interesting because it really makes you think about, it makes you speculate at the very least about what's going on here? Like what's really going on, okay? Between all of the wrestlers getting let go, which, that happens in WWE that quite often. But it feels like it's been happening a lot more frequently. And the level of talent that is being released has been a higher level of talent than traditionally. I mean, traditionally, you might get one big name let go and then a bunch of people who are training or whatever. But lately, it seems like WWE has not been shy about letting go of big talent. And, they always reference cost cutting, right? Budget reasons, even though they're making money hand over fist. I mean, WWE is more profitable than they've ever been. And with Nick Khan consolidating more power, one has to ask, and I've asked this question before, but I think it's like creeping more and more into my mind. Are the McMahons getting ready to sell WWE? Is Vince McMahon himself getting ready to step away? And what happens when he does? Shane has been basically removed from all of the business. Triple H is just now coming back, and we're very unclear with what his role is going to be. And now Stephanie is stepping away. And when you put that on top of everything else, and Nick Khan becoming more powerful in the company, it just begs the question: what is Nick Khan's intention here? What are his intentions? And what is really going on behind the scenes? Because it does kind of feel like perhaps they're setting themselves up, right, for a sale. Like WWE is cutting, they're trying to clean up the budget a little bit. They're consolidating power because they're going to sell the company. And that's I mean, in all honesty, Vince is getting old. If Stephanie isn't quite as interested, I mean, who's to say that's not possible? And then we have to ask ourselves the fun question, the scary question, but could be fun. What does WWE look like without Vince McMahon? What does WWE look like if Disney owns it? Or NBC? Or Fox? Many of the problems, and I'm listening to Guy Evans' book, Nitro. It's a fantastic book about WCW, specifically Nitro, but about WCW, the inner workings of WCW, and kind of through the creation of the show Nitro, Eric Bischoff getting power, and then all the way through, and it's all stuff that like I already know. Like if you follow WCW pretty closely and extensively, it's all stuff that you already know. But it's just interesting hearing it all again, and from different perspectives as well. And I would check out the book. But what's interesting is that a lot of the problems from WCW came from the conglomerate that was Turner, right? Because WCW was owned by this giant mega corporation. WCW was run a bit differently than the family owned WWF at the time. And while WWE is a giant corporation, let's not kid ourselves. They're much bigger now than they were back in the Attitude Era. in terms of company size. But imagine if WWE was just some subsidiary of NBC. I think the product would change a lot, right? And probably not for the better. I mean, a lot of people complain about WWE because it's so corporate, because it's so homogenized, Um, the stark difference between AEW and WWE is that WWE appeals to a wider audience, in my opinion, and AEW appeals to a specialized audience. So if you're a hardcore wrestling fan like me or you can find things in AEW that you really like because you are the target audience for AEW. But when we watch WWE, we feel like, ew, this isn't good. I don't like the booking. I don't like the storytelling. This feels goofy. I hate the CGI graphics that are up there. But we have to remember that WWE is not targeting us. They're not putting on this product for you and I, the specialized wrestling fan, right? They're putting on this product for 6-year-olds, for 13-year-olds, for casual fans, for grandmas and grandpas, for parents who have to take their kids to the events. Like that's who they're appealing to, not you and I. WWE is unfortunately, or fortunately, well beyond appealing to you and I. Whereas AEW appeals to a specialized audience and I think suffers a bit for it. But that's my opinion. So to circle back to this story, I think the things that we dislike about WWE and how corporate they are only get worse if WWE is purchased by Disney or NBC or those companies. And if because Vince McMahon, at the very least, has been around long enough to know. I mean, obviously, who knows wrestling better than Vince McMahon? But what happens if you take Vince McMahon out of the picture and you get somebody like Nick Khan who doesn't know wrestling? Well, your wrestling show is going to feel a lot less wrestling. I mean, say what you want about Tony Khan. Tony Khan is a wrestling fan. So he knows wrestling. I don't know. Imagine taking football, you got the NFL and you put somebody in charge who doesn't know the NFL. I mean, maybe Roger Goodell doesn't. I don't know. When they're making rules and they're thinking through things, they're not thinking about football. They're thinking about their target audience, which is not hardcore football fans. It's just not. The NFL does not cater to hardcore football fans. There are programs that do. NFL Network does. ESPN does. But the NFL itself is catered more towards casuals. That's why sometimes, and people think about this, but all this woke stuff, everybody wonders, like, why does the NFL do all this woke stuff when the NFL audience clearly hates it? Like, football fans are not people who care about any of this woke crap. But the truth is that the NFL, when they do the woke stuff, they're not catering towards the NFL fans. They've got the hardcore fans. They don't need to appeal to the hardcore fans. Same thing with WWE. They don't need to appeal to you because you're going to watch every Monday. You're going to watch WrestleMania every year. You're going to watch Royal Rumble every year. They got you. They don't need to get you. They need to get casuals. They need to get people who watch Law and Order. I don't think Law and Order is a show anymore. People who watch, what does even modern TV look like? What's it? Young Sheldon. They want to get people who watch that show every week to watch WWE. That's their audience that they're targeting. Because you, who's watching this show right now, they got you. You're already sucked in. You're not going anywhere. If you're willing to watch some obscure show on YouTube about MMA and wrestling, well, they've got you. But again, we see this, and Stephanie McMahon is someone who doesn't have a lot of respect among wrestling fans for whatever reason. But the truth is, we should be leery of stuff like this. We should be a little protective of WWE. Even if we don't agree with everything that they do and we don't agree with every booking decision that they make, we should be a little protective over the product. Because trust me, you do not want Disney buying WWE. They know nothing about wrestling. And we don't want that. We don't want that. Speaking of WWE, what the hell is going on backstage of WWE? So, I don't even know where to begin with this story. But on Monday Night Raw, Sasha Banks and Naomi, they walked out. They walked out of Monday Night Raw. There's conflicting stories about what happened, but it seems like perhaps what happened is they were unhappy with creative. They were booked for like a 6-pack challenge. Let's see if this story goes into it. Okay, yeah, they were suspended indefinitely. Okay, so here you go. They were supposed to wrestle in the main event. It was a 6-pack challenge. And they didn't like the creative around the finish of the 6-pack challenge. There were early reports that Naomi was supposed to pin Sasha Banks, but that may not be true. I guess there was reports that they didn't want to work with two of the competitors, but those reports, I think they came from WWE. They didn't make a lot of sense because who else was in the match? I think it was Asuka and Nikki ASH and people who, Banks and Naomi have worked with before. So that didn't make a lot of sense. And then it was reported that, they walked into John Laurinaitis' office and they were unhappy about how the women's tag team belts had been booked. And so there's been a lot of like back and forth about what happened here. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is they were unhappy with their creative, and so they walked out. Now, from what is being reported, it seems like Sasha Banks was kind of the ringleader of this. Naomi just tagged along out of camaraderie, She wanted to stick with her partner. And what was very strange about it was when it happened, WWE issued a statement. And the statement was rather scathing of Sasha Banks and Naomi. And then on SmackDown on Friday night, they suspended them and stripped them of the title belts, dressing them down. Everybody's from WWE's end, Michael Cole and Corey Graves, and everybody's just kind of dressing these two down, which made me think instantly, we're being worked. This is a work. This is kayfabe. Something's going on here, and it still could be, okay? Reports are that it is not, but it still could be. Now, this has created a divide in the wrestling world amongst performers, amongst fans. A lot of people have come out and supported what Naomi and Sasha Banks did. A lot of people, like Mickey James here in this article, where she's applauding them walking out. It's okay. We'll get into that in a bit. And CM Punk came out in support of what they did. Obviously, CM Punk has also walked out before because, famously from WWE for being unhappy with creative. But, a lot of people are comparing this to when Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out. But I think that's a bit different. I think that's a bit different. So I don't quite remember the details behind Austin walking out. I think it was, he felt like it was bad business to lose to Lesnar on Raw or something. Or I think it was wrestling Lesnar on Raw. He thought it was bad business because that was a good pay-per-view match. So, okay. My hot take on this issue, and perhaps this is controversial and I really don't care. You sign a contract, okay, as a performer in WWE. And you know that as a performer in WWE, you're not in charge of creative. You don't have creative control in your contract, probably for good reason. I mean, we've seen that again, going back to how WCW fell apart. Well, Hogan's creative control clause certainly didn't help anything. You're basically at the whim of WWE and how WWE wants to book you. You know, WWE pays to promote you. They put a lot behind you. They create your character. They put you on TV. They give you airtime. So a lot of why you are as famous as you are is because of the WWE machine. I mean, think about it. Without WWE, we would not know who Naomi or Sasha Banks is, and nobody would give a damn about either of them. Now, if you're Sasha Banks or Naomi, you could argue that, sure, we put butts in the seat. We sell a lot of merchandise. We deserve a better contract. We deserve to be treated. I mean, you can think that the company is misusing you, that nobody is disagreeing with the sentiment that the company is misusing you. The disagreement comes in the way that you handle yourself in those situations, and is walking out of the company that you are contractually obligated to perform for. Is that professional? And the answer is, of course not. That is absolutely unprofessional. It is a childish way to handle the situation. You are at the this is going to sound so terrible, and I don't mean it to, but you have a contract. You are contractually obligated to go perform, and that's exactly what you are. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. Okay, you are not an athlete. Okay, you are an athlete. What you're doing as a wrestler is athletic. Let's not kid ourselves. This is scripted television. This is fake. You are a character in a scripted television show. And could you imagine if they were filming an episode of, I'll go back to Young Sheldon again, just because that was the show I weirdly used earlier in the show. And all of a sudden, young Sheldon says, I don't like this script. I'm done. I'm walking out. This is not how I think that Sheldon would act in this situation. And because of that, I'm out of here, man. How do you think that would be handled? You think that's okay? No, it's a scripted TV show and you are playing a role in that show. You can disagree with that, and you could go to your boss and talk about how you disagree with that, and all is fine and good. But you have to continue honoring the contract that you signed. I mean, you signed that contract. I'd say the same thing about, and this isn't a sexist women's thing. I don't give a shit if it's a woman or a man. I say the same thing about MJF. MJF can bitch about how much money he's getting paid, but at the end of the day, you signed that contract knowing what your pay was going to be. Honor your damn contract. Now, you can negotiate all along the way. Nobody's saying you can't. If I'm Naomi or Sasha Banks, I can disagree with creative. I can make it incredibly known that I disagree with creative. I can do everything in my power to make it known that I disagree with creative. But at the end of the day, you still got to get your ass out there and perform. I'm sorry, but you're nothing without WWE. And so to act like you're bigger than the business, well, that doesn't sit well with me. I think it's incredibly unprofessional. If I were the booker of AEW, why the hell would I want to book Sasha Banks or Naomi, knowing that if I decide to run a storyline that these two disagree with, they might just get up and walk out? I'm paying you. You're a performer. Go perform. And so obviously a lot of people are coming out saying, oh, well, you got to side with the talent. Why do you always have to side with the talent? That's the other thing. And then people will knock me and say, oh, you're big corporation. Okay, WWE fanboy. It's not about that. It's about basic respect. It's about holding yourself above. If you think WWE is acting torrid, hold yourself above them, right? Be above all that bullshit. Honor your contract and then get the hell out of there when it's up. It's just disrespectful. It's stupid. It's just stupid is what it is. So you walk out, you cause a big scene, and you think this helps you? It shouldn't help you. No one should book you. If you act this unprofessional, no one should book you. Oh, but the performers put their bodies on the line. We should always side with the performers. Okay, so if I decided I didn't want to show up for work tomorrow, would you side with me? Or would you say, sorry, you're not working. You're going to get fired because you're not showing up to work. It's the same thing. They're not special because what? They're celebrities? I don't give a damn. And why are you siding with the celebrities? Because what? Because they're the workers? Oh my gosh. I mean, look, 9 times out of 10, yeah, I want the workers to get what they deserve. But we're talking storylines here. We're talking fake belts in a fake sport. We're not talking about money. And even then, you negotiate, you do it the right way. And then if you don't like what WWE's paying you, you go somewhere else because there's competition. And if you're really worth that much, you're going to get paid that much. It's simple business. I'm sorry. Mickie James can side with them all she wants. I don't care. I don't care. Because Mickie James would be nothing without WWE, by the way. CM Punk would be nothing without WWE. CM Punk, of course, comes out and sides with them because he's a freaking communist. He's also a dumbass. But besides that, and again, I know people are like, oh my gosh, how dare you talk bad about CM Punk? What do you want from me? I as a wrestler, I love CM Punk. As a person, I think he's garbage. But as a wrestler, I love CM Punk. So I may have just pissed you off, and that's fine. I'd like for you to leave a comment in the comments section and let me know where you stand on this. Do you think that Sasha Banks and Naomi are in the right for walking out, or do you agree with me and think that this is not the professional way to handle this, and I don't know what this is going to do for them or how this is going to help them? Particularly Naomi, because I'll be completely honest with you. Sasha Banks at least has that Snoop Dogg connection. What the hell does Naomi have? She's just a wrestler. She doesn't got much. So where's she going to go? What's she going to do? I don't know, But what I know is that this is probably a hot take, and I don't care. I would say the same thing if somebody did this in AEW. I would say the same thing if somebody did this in Impact. I would say the same thing if somebody did this in NWA. You sign a contract, honor your contract, work your dates. If you disagree with your creative, do so through the proper channels, prove they're wrong, and, get out when your contract's up. But walking out like a baby, like a child, like a 13-year-old would, taking your ball and going home because you don't like the rules of the game, that's childish bullshit. It honestly is. I don't know why you would support that. Why would anybody support somebody just quitting? We used to not support that type of stuff. You used to quitting was bad. It was frowned upon. Now quitting is just like, oh, well, of course they quit because the game isn't fair. I don't give a shit. It is what it is. You signed your contract. You're getting paid. You're getting paid lots of money, by the way, to do that. So get out there and perform. It's ridiculous is what it is. Always side with the wrestlers. Okay, yeah, right. Sure. And believe all women, too. It's ridiculous. Nobody is infallible. And in this case, I'm sorry, but Naomi and Sasha Banks are fallible. They should have handled themselves more professionally. And WWE's right for stripping their titles and suspending them. And if I were WWE, I wouldn't even let them out of their contracts. I'd say, sorry, you didn't perform the amount of dates that you contractually said that you would. So we want those dates. I don't care if that's a hot take. That's my take. And so it is. And you're on my channel watching this. So that is what it is. But let me know in the comment section what you think. It's interesting because, again, I say this, and then with the MJF news last week, and it just seems like a lot of this like backstage garbage is getting away of the in-ring performances, and that is super sad. Like Double or Nothing, I'm pretty sure is next weekend, and am more interested in all of this than I am Double or Nothing. Now, that's not to say we're not going to cover Double or Nothing, because of course we are. Of course we are. But I don't know. Anyways, that is all I have for you tonight. So again, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me live. If you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. If you stuck around for this long, special thank you to you. Comment in the comment section what you think about all these stories. Let me have it if I'm wrong. I mean, feel free to let me have it. I'll take it. I'm a man. I can take it. So let me know in the comments section. Please, if you like my content, if you want to see more of this, like, share, and subscribe. Again, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with the channel. We'll see. I'm just not sure yet. But anyways, for right now, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.